Hi, I'm Dan, owner and operator of Arctic Vapor LLC, and this is the beginning of what I hope will be a helpful series revolving around vaping, wicking, coil building, product demos, and really anything else that my customers ask me for. I've been vaping and making juice for about 5 years now, and I opened Arctic Vapor as an alternative to Chinese made e-liquid. And we've slowly grown over the years until this year we finally opened our own shop here in Fairbanks. So I'd like to thank all of my customers and everybody who supported us along the way. So these videos are for you guys, and if you have any questions or you need anything, you let me know and I'll do the best I can to help you out. So today, for those of you that are new, this video may not be the most helpful, but for most of my customers, I guess the number one question right now revolves around coil building. So RDAs and RBAs, or rebuildable dripping atomizers, and rebuildable atomizers are kind of the newest and hottest thing right now. And a lot of customers are really interested in them, but not exactly sure how to build the coils. So today I'm going to do a video on that, and then I'll probably be doing a follow-up video here shortly on our new coil making jigs, which make the process just a little bit easier. So bear with me and I'll see if we can teach you how to build these coils. So for those of you who've watched our videos before, welcome back, and for anybody who's new, welcome. I hope you all find this video useful. So in order to build a coil, the first thing you're going to need is some sort of resistance wire. I prefer Kanthal. In this particular video, we're going to be using 28 gauge Kanthal wire. You probably will need a pair of tweezers. I find that they make compressing the coils much easier, and we'll cover that as we go along. You don't have to have screwdrivers for this. You may need it if your atomizer requires it, but I find them helpful for wrapping the coil themselves. You're also going to need some sort of wicking material. I prefer the Japanese cotton, but silica works well also. You're going to need some sort of a cutter. I like these little nippers, but needle nose pliers, anything as long as it has a cutting will work. The nippers are nice because you can get closer and really get a good cut. And you don't want a bunch of extra wire hanging off there. You may need scissors to cut your wicking material, but that is optional. And you're probably also going to want some sort of resistance checker. So this is a little smoke omnimeter. There's lots of other types out there. Whatever you can get your hands on, that's, you're going to want something, especially if you're going to get serious about building coils. All right, so to get started with, this is going to be a little tricky to show on camera, but I'm going to do the best I can. This screwdriver that I'm using here is about 2 millimeters, and I want to just leave a little extra coil because you're going to need this as one of your leads. It doesn't have to be super long, but I like to leave a little bit because you can always cut off. It's better to leave a little bit longer. Now the resistance of the coil is going to depend on how many wraps you use, and is also going to depend on the length of or rather the gauge of the wire. So this 28 gauge wire, I know that if I wrap it about 6 times, I'm going to get about a 1.5. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this 3, 4, 5. And when you're doing this, you want to try to keep your coil as tight as possible. You don't want huge gaps in there. Now you're going to get some gap, and that's normal, because the wire is pretty hard to compress together. Now when I get done, what I'm doing is I'm actually pulling this lead right here up. And the reason I'm doing that is so the wire will actually end up out straight. Because in this case, I'm going to want both of these leads pointing in the same direction. Now you may want your leads pointing in opposite directions depending on what type of coil or what you're building your coil for. Now when I'm done with that, I'm going to pull this lead, the one I started with, tighter, and I'm going to try to push this wire in to compress it even further. All I'm doing is I'm using my thumbnail to push this wire in kind of against the edge of the screwdriver here. And I'm sorry again, this is not something easy to do on camera. I'll take some stills and see if I could put them on at the end so that you can see what this coil looks like. Now you want, probably the easiest way to do this is going to be to cut one of these two leads. See, right now you have one that's really long and one that's shorter. You're going to want to cut one of these, probably the really long one, a little bit shorter than the other one. And the reason being is that when you are installing these, it's going to be much easier to have one shorter than the other, so that when you slide one of them through, the other one's not poking into the other terminal as you're going. And when you're done with your coil, it should look, let's see, come on, focus, my friend, focus, there we go. You should be able to get it something like this. You're going to have a little gaps between the wires, but they shouldn't be huge. You want it as tight as you can get it. Okay, so let me get a device set up here, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we've got our coil made, and I've got a Smoke Tech RDA, one of the old school RDAs here, on this little omnimeter. Alright, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and screw this in and check the resistance. In the last video I said it should be about 1.5, but it actually should be about 1.1 with 6 wraps. So we're going to go ahead and check that. So we'll go ahead and screw it in here, and at the moment we don't have any wick or anything, we're just checking the resistance. So I'm going to go ahead and screw down these posts. Whoops, if I go the right direction that would probably help. And we don't want the coil to actually touch the metal, so I may have to adjust this. Okay, alright, so it's sitting just above the deck. Whoops. Okay. Alright, it's sitting just above the deck, and again, let's see if I can get some sort of close-up on here. Okay. It is reading 1.1 to 1.2 ohms, and that's perfectly fine. That's about what we want. The coil is sitting right above the air intake, and that again is what we want. We want to get the airflow right. So the airflow comes out here. We want the airflow to come right up through the coil. And the reason being is you're going to get a much warmer vapor and you're going to get much better air draw that way. Alright, so now that I've got the coil in place, and this will be different depending on what type of RDA or RBA you're using. Of course, everything always is a little different. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and try to straighten this out. And what I'm doing here is I've inserted the screwdriver that I used to make the coil. And now I am just bending this so that it is horizontal rather than vertical. Alright. So my coil, would help if I tightened this down, I think. Alright. So my coil is now horizontal. Let's see if we can get a better shot of that. There we go. Alright, and then the next thing I'm going to do, we're sitting about 1 ohm, and that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and clip these little pieces of extra lead off. Now what we want to do, this is the reason I like these little nippers, is we want to get in as close as we can and clip it off as close to the post as we can. And let's see if you can see here. There is a little extra hanging off the back, but it's not anything significant. We don't want it touching the outside, because when we put on the body here, I've got one of these, when we slide this down over it, we don't want that coil to touch the outside of the RDA, or it will short the coil out. Okay, so now that we've got that done, the next step is to go ahead and fire this coil and try to get it to press in as tight as we can. Okay, so here we go again. I now have the RDA set up with the coil on it, and I have the battery, and everything's ready to go here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fire this. So I'm going to unlock the screwing base here, and we're going to go ahead and fire this coil up. So in order to fire this coil, you just want to heat it up until it glows. Now it should glow from the inside to the outside if the coil is properly made, and then if not, or either way, what you want to do is you want to take these tweezers that I showed you earlier, or a nice pair of needle nose pliers, and just squeeze these coils together gently. So all I'm doing is squeezing this coil together. I'm going to heat it up again. You can see it glowing. Let go. Don't squeeze while it's firing, or you will short the coil out. And then all I'm doing is squeezing the coil together to try to get a nice tight coil. You want the coil as tight as you can without the coils overlapping. So I'm going to fire it one more time. Should fire from the inside out beautifully. It does. Let it glow, and pinch the coil together. When it's all done, you'll have kind of a nice bluish tint to the metal there. And that's where the metal's been burned. Let's see if I can actually show you how I was pinching it now that I got my camera to zoom. So all we're doing is taking this after it's heated up and squeezing these coils together like so. Heating it up and squeezing the coil together like so. Okay. So now that it is done, the next part is the wicking. For this, I'm using the Japanese cotton. All I'm going to do is cut off a very, very thin strip. These coils, especially at like 1 or 2 millimeter, are pretty tiny, and actually a strip of cotton this size can actually make 2 wicks. So I'm just going to split that in half. I'm going to take this piece here, and all I'm going to do is just kind of fluff it a little bit. You don't want to roll it up, otherwise it'll kind of bind and it won't wick as well. And then I'm just going to take this end and just roll this one tip, just like you're threading a needle or a fishing lure. And then I'm going to just run it through here. And be careful when you do this if your coil is hot, because you will burn your hand. Also, never fire this cotton while it's dry, or you will ignite the cotton. It will just burn right up. So the next trick is to go ahead and cut these off. Now this depends on the size. This depends on what tank you're using, honestly, or what RDA you're using, or what you're building the coil for. You don't want too much in there, otherwise you'll just end up with a mess. And to be honest with you, I don't find that it wicks any better with a bunch of extra batting in there. I like mine a little bit fluffy because I find that it wicks best. Also, let me lock this so I can set it down. Also, you want this to be able to move in and out. See how it just slides through the coil there? You don't want it tight inside that coil, otherwise it's not going to wick properly. And it looks like my coils come a little loose again here. Okay. Alright, and then the last step is to go ahead and wet it and then put on your cap if you're using a dripper, or build your tank again if you're using a tank. Obviously the dripper is a little easier, and I usually recommend for people that are starting out. I know that dripping is not always the most popular way to go because it's not quite as convenient, but I find that when you're learning how to do this, drippers are much easier to build than the tanks are. The tanks are fantastic in terms of convenience once you have them built, but building them is a little trickier. I'm not sure if this guy will fire. It looks like I may have actually broke the wire. Let's give it a shot. Oh, there it goes. And if you built it properly, you should get some nice vapor coming off there. Alright, let's put the lid on this guy. Give it a try. Now this isn't going to be fantastic because the airflow on these older style RDAs are not great. Well, let's see what we can do with it here. Alright, come back up to me here. Alright, and that would be how to build a coil. There are lots of other types of coil builds out there, obviously. On this one, let's see if we can show you. I've actually got 2 coils. This one I've been using for a little while. This is a much more modern RDA, a Helios. This guy has much better airflow, and you'll get much bigger clouds. This one's also running at 0.5 ohm. So yeah, you get pretty massive clouds with that. When you're building down below an ohm though, you do need to be careful with your batteries, and you need to know the signs to look for. If you ever have a battery that's getting hot or venting for any reason, you need to take that battery out and don't use that battery again. If it's getting hot, it's possible that you are overstressing the battery, but you're better off to take that battery out and not use it, at least for a while. Bring it in, let me have a look, we'll check it out. Because you don't want to put yourself in any danger. Also, just make sure, like I said, you're using good batteries. Make sure the battery is rated for what you're using it for. There's a great app out there called Ohm's Law that you can get on either Android or Apple, and it will allow you to calculate what amperage you're using. And if you ever have any questions on that, I'm always happy to answer it. So I hope these videos are helpful, and my next one up will be on the coil jig, which should make these coil builds a little bit easier. Again, I'll try my best to upload some still photos of these coils, and I'll try to see if we can't get this camera to work a little bit better for the next video. So I hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.